Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. We want to let you know that we have once again been honored with a nomination for the Hockey Podcast of the Year via the Sports Podcasting Awards. And all you need to do to help us is go to ourkidsplayhockey.com and click on the Vote Now button. It asks you a couple questions. You're in and you're out, and you have voted for us for Hockey Podcast of the Year. I want to thank you all for being a wonderful, wonderful audience and helping us get to this stature of hockey podcasting, because we've done it as a family, as the hockey friends and families around the world. Thanks so much and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Lee. Welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey. We got a great guest today. Dale Weise played 10 years in the NHL. He's got 4 kids, so we dived into that today. He also coaches a few of them in the game. And we got everything down today, from his journey to the NHL, being in the NHL, being a hockey dad, and a lot of the skill sets that we really need to provide our kids as parents so they can be successful, not just in hockey, but in life. But before we get to it, we want to let you know that this episode is sponsored, whatever the word is you want to use, by Hockey Wraparound. And we want to tell you about their new dry stick product for this season that you're already in. It's a portable equipment dryer. It attaches right to your hockey stick, which your kid has with them every game. Fits right in your bag. So helps to dry your gear, which helps with keeping the bacteria off, which helps to consolidate the gear. Above all, just check it out, do some research, learn about it, and use OKPH on hockeywraparound.com for a nice discount on any of their products, including the Hockey Wraparound itself. But check it out, hockeywraparound.com, hockeywraparound.com, hockeywraparound.com. Check out the dry stick and help your kids out with being a little more responsible with drying their equipment, right? We don't want to leave it on the floor. Anyway, that's a problem that I had growing up and not anymore. Anyway, without further ado, enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey with Dale Weise. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias with Mike Bonelli, and we are privileged to have a former NHL player and now hockey dad, Dale Weise, with us today. Many of you will know Dale from his time in the NHL, which spanned 10 seasons with the Rangers, Canucks, Canadiens, the Flyers, and he had a cup of coffee with the Blackhawks. Dale is also no stranger to international hockey, having played most recently in Sweden and in the Netherlands during the 2012-13 lockout. Check this out. His massive point production earned him the nickname the Dutch Gretzky. Look forward to diving in that for a moment today. But above all, he's a loving father to his 4 kids, Hunter, Jordana, Jersey, and Hayes, and is a loving husband to his wife, Lauren. Dale, it's great to have you today. Welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thanks for having me. I'm pumped to be here. Being
great.
coaching my kids now and everything. I'm a fresh hockey dad right out of retirement, so I'm excited.
We're excited too. We always love the perspective that someone in your position brings, and we're definitely going to dive into your life as a hockey dad, because I know the audience is excited about that. But typically, what we're more excited about and what parents want to know is, let's talk about your journey to the NHL real quick. From juniors all the way in. And here's the question: look, how hard was it to crack the league, and what do you feel made you successful along the way? For those parents kind of sitting on the end of the bench right now, like, help me make my kid make it.
Yeah, I think I'm a great example for a lot of those parents, because I was never the most talented guy, never the most skilled guy. I just outworked everybody. That was always kind of my motto, which was driven in me from my parents from a young age. You get in junior hockey and you work your way up, and by the time my 3rd year came around, I was the top guy, and you score points, and much in the American League. I think after having an NHL career and playing the role that I did in the NHL, I think a lot of people forget how good I was in the American League. At 21 years old, I had 30 goals, 100 and some penalty minutes. I was fighting everybody. So I got better every year, much like I did in the NHL. I started from the bottom, and I kind of grinded my way up. But I think there's no real roadmap for what got me there. I just think I continued to get better every year. I always believed I could do it, probably more than anybody around me.
Right.
You obviously have your close people around you, my parents and my wife and stuff like that. But on the road there, you got to believe in yourself more than anybody else does. And, persistence and stay with it. I got cut plenty of times in my life. I got cut in junior. I got cut 4 times in the NHL before I made it. So,
Wow.
it's a long road, but I always believed I would eventually get there. And when I got there, I'd find a way to carve out a niche. And I was grateful enough to do it for just over 10 years.
One of the things I like to tap on when I ask this question, and I took some notes from what you said, is that, look, we always say this, talent is obvious. You have to have talent to make that level. Like, right. I'm talking to parents. If your kid has talent, that's great. But a lot of players have talent, right? So to really crack it, as you said, from the AHL up to the NHL, there's some other things that you talked about, self-confidence, right? And that's a question I always pose to parents in a positive way of what are you doing to help your kids build that, right? Because if you're constantly protecting them, if you're constantly, umbrelling over them, they might not build that. And you need, and that only comes through adversity, which brings me to the next word that, comes to my head. You're talking about grit. I always worked harder than everybody else. I had this determination. I didn't give up. Where did those skills come from? Is that something your parents instilled in you? Did something happen in your youth where, you kind of understood that, okay, these are skill sets that you apply to hockey?
Yeah, definitely. That was instilled from my parents for sure. I come from a very blue collar family. Both my parents worked full time. We were, middle class, middle of the road people. Had enough. That I was happy as a kid, but my parents always instilled in me, from the time I started playing hockey, if you're going to go and do something, regardless if I'm asking you to do chores or you're doing hockey, whatever it is in life, you do it at the best of your ability and you work as hard as you can. And that
I
was
love that.
something that always stuck with me. And then I kind of, transferred that into sports, whether I was playing soccer or baseball or hockey as a kid.
Right.
If I was there, whether it was practice, a game, playing in the backyard with my brother, I was doing it the best of my ability every single time I did it. And I think over time, that's where your confidence comes from, just continuing to do the right things and putting that extra work in all the time, regardless, whether I'm in my backyard screwing around with my brother or, I'm actually in a practice and a real thing. I think, you get that confidence from consistency, doing it day in, day out, getting better. And, as a parent, the best way you can do is, and I do with my guys now is I try to shape working hard before anything. My oldest guy plays hockey and the thing for me that I'm telling him all the time is, okay, we had a bad game, you didn't score. He comes out, he's upset like any kid. Oh, I didn't score. Well, you did this right. You did this right. And that builds some confidence. He's like, wow, I never even thought that was something that you would be proud of. And that's kind of how you build that confidence from there.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And I want to reiterate, I know we have a lot of parents that have emailed us and saying, hey, I listened to this show with my kids in the car on the way to the rink. And what I love that you said is, like, I take the garbage out well, right? Again, I'm super privileged, Mike, too. We get to be around a lot of professional athletes and professional people. And the thing I notice is they do everything to that level. I mean, I've seen athletes eat competitively, like just
Oh, yeah.
eat dinner competitively. So it's an all the time thing. And this has nothing to do with being competitive. I shouldn't have probably used that example. My point is, hey, if I'm taking the garbage out, I'm doing it well. If I'm cleaning my room, I'm doing it well. If I'm doing my homework, I'm doing it well, because the practice of that, of just doing it to the best of your ability, you got to think about it. That cannot just be reserved for games and practices. It's an all the time thing. And again, Dale or Mike, from my understanding, from my watching, everybody who makes it's kind of like that for the most part. I don't think I've ever met a pro athlete that was just super lazy. I mean, maybe if they had the most God-given talent in the world, they could do that. But even those guys, I think, still work hard.
Yeah, I mean, my question is right in that same ballpark. I mean, I think, one of the cool things that Lee does, he does all these different podcasts and has, obviously athletes, but he has professionals. And the best part is when you hear athletes that and professionals, or athletes that become in a real job, like that come out of, not enjoying this world of the NHL, or the NFL.
Are you saying that being an NHL player is not a real job, Mike?
No, it's a horse. It's terrible. It's so jealous. No, it's just not a real job. But again, it's the place where if you're a top salesperson or a top NHL hockey player, those two things just seem to align all the time. Your self-confidence and God-given ability, whether you're a great talker or a great salesperson or you're great at plumbing, whatever it is, and grit, like overcoming adversity. So one of the things that I would want to ask you, Dale, is because you're working with kids now too, is in this world, and this is what I'm seeing because I work with teenagers a lot, and like, I don't even know what I would do if there was social media back when I was a young player. I really don't. I don't know how I would react. I don't know how I would absorb it. I don't know how I would, kind of know the BS from the real stuff. What's some advice you could give, from a perspective of, not growing up in a social media world and comparing yourself to somebody every single day, that we could give our kids to say, well, this is how you have to build grit and not worry about what the 4 kids on Instagram are doing. Like, I mean, do you experience that now and you probably saw it towards the end of your career, even the players coming in, and that pressure, maybe it's good pressure, I don't know, but that pressure that, everything's under a microscope all the time.
Yeah, I agree with you. Social media has changed a lot of things. From me, I think when I first entered the NHL, Twitter was just a thing. So Twitter was just starting to come out, and I never had, I had Facebook. You talk to your buddies and stuff, but it's not like people are ripping you on Facebook. So I never had to deal with that through junior in the American League. But when I got to the NHL, all of a sudden, I don't even dress a game, and I have 300 people telling me I'm the worst player in the league, and I should quit playing. And I don't care who you are. It's really hard if you've never dealt with that to sit there and not feel bad about yourself. Like, I'm a very confident person, and I have been from a young age, and I still am. But it takes some extremely tough skin to sit there, and I don't even care if you don't know the person. This person's just harping on you and telling you how bad you are.
And here you are, like, dying for the team too, right? That's what happens.
And
like, you're dying for
it's tough.
Yeah,
there's a human element to it. I don't care who you are. The guy that sits there and says, "Well, yeah, I read my tweets and it doesn't bother me," like, you're lying. You're lying. There's a human element. It bothers you to some degree, regardless if you know the person or not. But I think that's where, everybody that's coming up now, they've been through that a little bit. Maybe they were the kid at 13 on their Instagram chirping the NHL guys. Then it's a little bit different story, but it's difficult. I don't know if it's good pressure, but I do think the positive, and I like to look at the positive of everything, even in terrible situations. I think, when they're doing that at a young age and they're going through that, it really forces you to have tough skin. And if you're going to be, whether you're a high level athlete, get used to dealing with that kind of pressure of people telling you you're awful in the newspaper, your wife has to see it, your kid has to see on YouTube some guy ripping you, telling you, you're terrible and you're the worst player. You got to get used to that, because that's kind of the bad part of being, NHL. Playing in the NHL, I don't think is a job. It's a privilege. That's the bad part of the job. That kind of thing.
I mean, nobody's ripping my accountant, down the street, like, oh my God, I cannot believe you didn't get this guy a refund like the other guys got. Like, to me, it's just a crazy world. But I think when we look at our kids that are not equipped without social media, right? And then we're adults like me, like I'm pretty savvy with social media, but I'm only learning, like, my God, the depths of this. Like, I don't know why somebody on their couch would tell Weise that he's not a good player. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But, like, I think just we're working with kids, and I love that that discussion, that when you're talking about grit, it could help with that grit. It could help you build that adversity to say, okay, listen, this has happened. Maybe it was a bad play. Maybe you did do poorly. But what are you going to do to overcome it and clear the noise out? And it's probably a whole new skill set that our young athletes are learning.
100%, and I think it's a huge skill set. Let's look at the Philadelphia Flyers right now. Hired a very interesting coach that does not make life easy on you as a player. And I played for him, on 2 different teams. That grit you need to have. I think coaches are getting better at communicating. I think they realize that style of coaching is probably not the best way to go with the new age kids. But you got to have some grit where you're having a tough night and the coach is hammering you, or you got sacked for a couple of shifts and you're sitting there and he's hammering you. It's like, instead of just folding the tent and sitting there and pouting and being like, yeah, I'm having a tough night, that's all it's going to be. You get some grit, you grow some tough skin and say, okay, I'm going to show you now. And that's the same for the guy that's chirping the internet. Maybe you're probably not going to fire back at him on Instagram. You don't need to, but let your play do your talking, go back and you prove people wrong. And that's, having that chip on your shoulder can be a very motivating chip that could take you a long way.
Right. I'll tell both of you this. Like, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk online. He's obviously does a lot of stuff, but a mother asked him recently, what's the biggest skill I can teach my kid in this kind of digital era? And he goes, self-confidence, which is what we talked about earlier. He goes, you need to teach your kid to be confident in themselves. So when these social media things do happen, they don't look at that like that's what matters. Because Dale, you're right. Look, it's going to hurt, especially if you're a teenager. Like there's just no way around that. We always joke middle school is the worst. But the trick is this, like, are you at home teaching your kid to be self-confident and understanding how to take someone's opinion of you and, as you said, morph it into a positive? Again, you can let it get you down or you can let it motivate you, right? I think parents are really at the forefront of teaching their kids how to do that.
Yeah. That's a huge skill. That's a really big skill. That comes down to mindset. And to me, if you want to be a top level athlete, a professional, you have to have a strong mindset. That
right.
90% of what you're going to do and how successful you're going to be is going to depend on right here. I don't care how skilled you are. I don't care if you're the most skilled guy on the ice. If you don't have any kind of mental toughness or grit, it's not going to last long. You might have one good year. You might have 2 good years. Eventually there's going to come a time where you start, things start going down for you. Yeah. If you don't have that kind of inner belief, that toughness that you can work through those tough things, and even, let's talk about in life too.
Right.
Whether picking on you at school, like there's all those things that they just, when you talk about high level professionals and athletes, they just blend together, because if you want to be very successful in anything you do in life, you got to have mental toughness. That is the number one skill to get you through a lot of things.
Yeah. And look, I always say this too, mental fitness, mental toughness. It's just like physical fitness, right? We talk about this a lot. You go to the gym, you're going to get in shape. You're going to stay in shape. You stop going to the gym, you know what happens, right? Your mind is the same way. If you do mental fitness exercises, and we got to break the stigma surrounding what that is. But if you train your mind and you work on your mind on a daily basis, we talked earlier about being relentless with your training, you will be mentally fit. If you stop, the opposite will happen. It's not something that you just achieve, you got it, and you move on with your life. You're going to be tested. And I love that you brought up skills for life, because hockey is the greatest vehicle for our growth as people. I mean, you will learn more in a tournament week than you will in 6 months if you don't play, about yourself and about your teammates. And again, everyone said it's true. All roads lead to adult league. Does not matter who you are. At the end of the day, you can't do this forever, right? So yes. the skills you pick up as a parent, as a player in the game, you will apply for the rest of your life. And like, what's funny, Dale, here. So I'm the youngest hockey parent on the show, right? Mike's kids are kind of in the middle of it. Our other co-host, Christy, who couldn't be here today, her kid's in D1 college. My kid's a mite. so I'm just starting out, but I'm amazed at how much I've had to apply grit to being a hockey dad. And that's where I want to turn this real quick, because you're a great father. We've spoken to several former NHL players who are now dads, and some of them describe watching and coaching their kids to be more stressful than actually having played in the NHL. So I wanted to know, where are you on that chart? Let's talk about you as a hockey dad for a few minutes.
Yeah. I think I would be on the side that I really just enjoy watching my guys play. I'm not the dad that's really, yelling and screaming.
Yeah, we all know that guy, by the way. We all know that guy.
Yeah, and to each their own. But I just enjoy watching them play. I know my oldest son, at 5 and 6 and stuff, he didn't really enjoy playing, and I never pushed him into it. If you want to do something, you do it. If not, hey, I'm happy to. You want to go try a different sport, or you want to do this. And the last couple of years, he's really gotten into it, and it's made me exciting. So I love going out there and watching him, and then I'm coaching him now. I think it's cool. I remember the times, that they're most memorable to me were literally the car rides with my dad and just spending that time together. So I feel that that kind of bond with my son now, just the one-on-one. We have 4 kids, so the one-on-one time driving to the rink and just being with him is really enjoyable for me right now.
No, that's fantastic.
Do you think it's less or more? And I've tried to ask different, players in that sport. Like, if you're watching your kids play soccer, or they're in the band, or they're doing something theater, like, is it the same stress no matter what, right? Because you're watching your child do something that, whether you were proficient at it or not, is really irrelevant. Like, I think a lot of us see this correlation that, well, I'm a hockey guy, so my kid must be destined to be a hockey person. Like, and I just think it's so hard for a parent to separate yourself from your children from the point of view of they actually have their own life and destiny, and I think, and you probably see that at the rink every day, right? You're watching a guy, like, you're screaming and yelling at your kid about back checking. I don't think you've even, I don't think you've seen a hamburger you haven't liked. You know what I mean? So I think it's like, where do you fall, like, in that piece of it? Like, if you were giving advice, from your own experience, and even, obviously from what your parents provided to you, like, where is that line of, like, this is how I deal with the fact that this is their life, because that's a learned skill too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, and I think that's a really good teaching lesson for a lot of people. And I have a lot of dads that come up and ask me, like, "Oh, do you want your son to go to the NHL? Do you want this?" And it's like, to be honest with you, probably not. Do I want him to be living the ups and downs every single day for 8 months for 20 years? Like, no, I don't. I'd rather him go have the grind for 9 to 5. He can shut his mind off. He's at home. He doesn't miss holidays. Like, you don't miss Christmas. There's just so many things that go into being a professional athlete that are not enjoyable. They're not fun. You miss a lot of things. So it's not the end all be all. I don't care how much money you make. Money means nothing. And I have a lot of experiences throughout my career where it doesn't matter how much, like, it doesn't matter. So if your kid is really passionate about it, then I think it's awesome, and support them and be there for him and give him every resource that you can. But if he's not the most passionate about it, and he just likes to be out there with his buddies, which is my older guy. He just wants to be with his friends and hang out. Yeah. I don't know if he truly has a passion for it. So I'm gonna make sure he works hard, because he's made a commitment. And when you make a commitment in life, you see it through. But I'm not there screaming and doing it. I think that fine line is, you can see if your kid has the passion for it. If they don't have the passion, you can't have it for them. Like, it's not going to last very long. He's going to play 2 more years and say, "Yeah, Dad, Mom, this isn't for me." So you really got to read the room, which I love that line. Read the room and make sure your kid has the passion for it. Then if it is, support him, get behind him, do the best you can to give him the most resources that you're able to. But at the end of the day, which I think is so cool as a parent, seeing different personalities. Being a coach now, I see different kids and different personalities. They're going to be what they're going to be. And no matter how much you try to shape and mold them, at the end of the day, they're going to make that decision. And that's, I think, which is so cool about watching kids grow up.
Yeah, Dale, you're bringing up another element here that I want to touch on, which is, everybody that we've talked to at the top has said these people love the game more than anybody else. Like, there is a clear passion amongst NHL players and coaches of how much they love the game. And the reason I'm bringing that up is this, and I think you said it perfectly. Your kid might not have that, and that's got to be okay, right? You can't force them into something they don't love. You want to find what they love, And I'll tell you some of the struggles with my own hockey parentum, if I call it that, is, like, look, I had a really clear understanding, at least I thought I did. You'll like the story. When I came into this with my son, my daughter's going to pick it up soon too. I can tell just from her. But, hockey's my thing, right? Like, it's always been my thing. And I don't want them to feel like it has to be their thing. My attitude with my kids was, if you want it, I'll give you every resource you could possibly want, but you got to want it. You got to love it. So a lot of my journey has been spent on just making sure my kids kind of enjoy hockey. And I've wrestled with that with my oldest, my son, of, I can't tell, right? He's 7 to 8. Again, we're going through a pandemic. There's a lot going on in the world. I always say this, I'm so thankful to be a host on this show, because Mike and Christy, like, they're like my therapists with this. But I'll tell you something that recently has changed, and I'm trying to share my journey with people who might be feeling similar ways. But, I was pretty involved as a coach last year because of the pandemic, right? Because we didn't know what was going to go on, and he kind of wanted me out there. And this year, I really said, I'm going to step back and not be out there. Well, what's funny about this? The other night, I got a call from another hockey parent saying, "Hey, we need another. Does your kid want to play in this tournament?" And I figured he was going to say no. And I go downstairs. I say, "Hey, Logan, you want to play?" And to my shock, and remember, I haven't been around that much this year, he goes, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do that." And I was like, "Really?" So he goes out there, and I wasn't there, and he scores his first hat trick. I mean, he did really well. And this is what I'm going to say with this. Like, I have a decision to make as a parent here. I can let my ego get in here and be like, oh, I missed that. And I just moved my ego aside. I was so happy for him. I was so happy that he enjoyed his time on the ice with his friends. He scored his first hat trick. He was so excited when he came home, right? Me being there wasn't a thing for him. That was a thing for me, right? And I didn't have any moment of, I screwed up by not being there. It was like, how great is this? He's falling in love with the game. I can see it. And his little sister is like, I want to play. So it's one of those things of me not being there. And don't get me wrong, I'm not planning on being absent or anything like that. But the situation just kind of dictated I couldn't be there. And he's figuring it out of himself. And I'm actually even wondering now, not too critically, but like, wow, I wonder if maybe I was putting a little pressure on him, or my presence there because he knows what I do, right, was putting pressure on him. So these are like the reflective questions I ask myself without any judgment. And again, it's a win-win, right? Like he just loved playing and he's saying, I can do it. And he's got that confidence you're talking about. And as a parent, I didn't need to be there hovering over him, telling him to be confident. He did this on his own. Kids are resilient. So again, that was a little bit of a long story, but you just reminded me of that. And I always like to make myself a little vulnerable here of, here I am, this hockey person. That's how everybody knows me. He didn't need that. He just need to go out and enjoy the game. And he was having a great time. Right. Parents need to, myself included, just got to remind ourselves that something. They're kids. They're playing a game. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a skill. I think that's a skill as a father to be able to do that, because I see it a lot at the rink where the kid comes out and has 3 goals, and all of a sudden the light comes on. It's like, wow, my son's really good. Maybe he is really good. Maybe he can make it. And very quickly it turns in the parent's mindset, and I can see it. And it's like, whoa, just pump the brakes. He's enjoying it. He's having fun out there. But and I understand it from a father's standpoint. Like my dad was the biggest hockey fan growing up. So, his passion obviously became mine. Every son looks at their father. Your dad's a hero. You want to be like him. You like the same team as him. You like the same players. But it's so hard sometimes as a father, because, now you're thinking like, well, am I doing enough for him? Where sometimes, and I have those inner questions too. It's like, am I doing enough for him? Can I push him harder? And it's kind of like what we just said is, it's almost better sometimes to take a step back and just be his father, be a parent, and just support him.
Right. And like I'm constantly having to remind myself my age versus his age. He's not in a position he's going to think like an adult about anything. And I think as parents, we do, well, hard work's important, but it's like, look, to an 8-year-old, what does that actually mean? It means if I do the hard work, I'll get my Nintendo. Right. But you can teach these things, but like, I'm always appreciative when someone comes up to me and goes, he's 8. He's 8. He's not 38. Like it's just, he's 8.
Hard.
When I grow up, I want to be like Mike Benelli. That's what no, I'm just kidding. Mike, you're a wonderful person. Dad, I love you. If you're listening to this, I'm so proud to be your son. But you're right. They're always watching, right? Dale and mom and dad, right? And how you act really is probably more important than what you say. When it gets back to that. Sorry, Mike, did you have something? I keep cutting you off.
No, but you're absolutely right. No, because like I dread, like if my son came home, like, oh, I really love basketball. Like, oh, like really, like I can't get behind that. I just,
how tall are you?
But it's just like, well, like the running joke in our house that there's no goalies allowed. Like you cannot play goalie. Well, I'm passionate about it. Well, you're not playing, so you're not allowed to be a goalie. You know what I mean? So I don't care what you like, but I think there is a little like there's that piece of I am struggling with this, not from me personally so much, but even a lot of the people I work with, is that the world has changed so much for these kids that if we just step back as parents and do nothing and say, let passion take the kid where they want to go, there's way more distractions now for a kid to be passionless, like to not find passion.
That's a great point, Mike.
Because because there's too many tools to allow them to be in their room alone, be on a phone all day, be in a computer. It's just, there's a lot of things that like I found passion because I was so bored out of my mind that I ran outside and shot pucks and
sounds familiar.
Dug holes and things like that, right? Yeah. So, but kids just, and that's not everywhere. I mean, we're probably I'm in the Northeast, so it's probably maybe I'm sure it's different in different areas, but for the people I work with and the people I'm dealing with, there is a line between Am I pushing or am I guiding? Am I giving
Right.
opportunity?
It's hard,
or am I just throwing my hands up saying, hey, if they find it, they find it. And I think there's many kids that won't find it because it's just like anything else. If there's no access to it, you can't find the passion. And I don't know, it's so, when we're speaking and we've on this podcast, which has been great, that we've gotten so much feedback. Like we get a lot of emails and we get a lot of text messages and they're like, well, this is what's happening to me. I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening to me. Like, that's exactly what's happening to me. Like, and I think that's where, we love talking to people like you, because you made it to the highest level in a sport, but you also understand the work that had to go into that. And, but think about like when you were 12 years old, if there was a whole bunch of other stuff, would you have gotten there without a little push, a little guidance? Because kids are kids. Like Lee just, he's reminding me, like an 8-year-old is an 8-year-old. If you give it a chance to most 8-year-olds to sit and play Fortnite for 8 hours, they will.
Right.
Yeah.
If you tell them to eat chocolate cake
they do.
every day,
Yeah.
they will.
Yeah.
Like, so where is that? I'm just wondering, like, it probably just an open question. Like, where is that? Like that line, and where is that line between pushing, guiding, and being, oh my God, we've got to put this kid in 7 different clinics because he's got to catch up.
Yeah, I absolutely love the way that you phrased that and spoke on that. Like, I think that is so good. And I think that is like, so many people need to hear that, because I feel like the half where like, okay, I'm going to push. And then you have the other half where like, well, I'm just going to kind of and you can't, like you said, like my son will sit in his room for 8 hours and play Fortnite 100% if I let him. So, and again, they're kids, so they really don't know what they like until they do it. But if you never give them the opportunity to, they won't know. So that's why I love like trying different sports, whether hockey's not your thing. Like if you're going to go play basketball, go play like,
yeah, well, whatever it is, like that. Yeah,
like
and I think the underlying theme though is when you do it, if you're going to be playing Fortnite for 4 hours, make sure you're good. Like, like actually, beat everyone. And then my joke when I do coaching clinics is like, you get the kids off Fortnite, play with them, like hound them, say no, do this, and use this, and then they're like, oh my God, Dad, you're the biggest
Mike. That was one of the best
me.
suggestions a friend gave me. It was you too, but my kid was playing games quite a bit. It was an uncomfortable amount for me, and someone said, play with them and watch what happens. Right, you'll either stop really quick or you'll have the time of your life. Either way, you're gonna win. But
I'm there 2 a.m. playing, Call of Duty. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, this war already happened. Why are we doing it?
Cool, though.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this too. My father, this was a pearl of wisdom he gave me when I was a kid. And actually, this was for leadership, but I'm applying it to parenting more now than I do leadership. But he always talked about a horse and the reins of a horse. And he goes, if you pull on the reins too much, too hard, the horse is going to kick off and throw you off. And if you just don't hold them at all, the horse is going to go wherever it feels like, and you're not going to get to where you need to be. But he goes, if you hold them just right, and that's a feeling and it's a constant thing, you got to know how much tension to give. The horse will go where you want it to go. And again, I'm not saying our kids are horses, but that analogy really works. Like, you got to know when to do it, when not. Like an example in my house. I think I'm just sharing this. Like everybody does parenting. I always say there's no perfect parents, but like my son is pretty good at reading. So we make sure that every night he's reading a biography, one of those kids' biographies, but about someone famous or someone who's accomplished something. We've put that as part of our day. And I don't care if he wants to do it or not, he's going to do it, because that's me being a parent saying, no, you're going to learn about other people and the mistakes they've made and the successes they've had. 20 minutes a day. And then you can earn your video game. Right. And then the other thing too is, and this is one that's been recently, my daughter who just turned 6 has been asking me a lot. You guys will relate to this, but I've been getting a lot. Hey, can I be this when I grow up? Can I be that when I grow up? And some of them are absurd. Don't get me wrong. But you know what I tell her? I don't tell her no, because I can't stand when anyone tells a kid, don't follow your dream. I just, that pisses me off to no extent. But what I tell her is, you can do whatever you want as long as you work hard, you put the time in, and you educate yourself. That's always my message. Whatever you want to be it. But like, that's the kind of seed that I'm planting of like, yeah, you can be a YouTube star or a ballerina or whatever, but you got to work hard to get it, because it's not guaranteed. I don't think personally that message has been getting out there enough. It's yeah, you can be whatever you want, and that's where it ends. That is not how it works. it's never been how it's worked, right? If you want it, you're going to have to work, and there's really no guarantee. The gift is you can pursue it. That has not always been true in the human experience.
Yeah.
You've got to put the work in. You've got to love it. And if you don't, get this, that's okay too. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, Dale, we hear a lot of parents, the kids are 18 and they've put in a large amount of money into this kid's hockey career. And at 18, the kid goes, you know what? I'm burnt and I don't want to play anymore. And the parents are devastated for multiple reasons, right? Money is probably the lowest on the thing, but here they are, they've put in the time, they put in all the stuff, and the kid doesn't want to do it anymore. And you got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with that. I'm going to throw it to you. I said a lot here, but I want to throw it to you just to get your general thoughts on this stuff.
Yeah, I think, I've seen a lot of limiting beliefs in people passed on from their parents. And it's really quite sad because I'm under the same impression as you. When I was 3 years old, I said I was going to play in the NHL. I told my dad I was going to play in the NHL. And, he never told me no, and I ended up doing it. I had a lot of people on the way told me I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Sure. But you need that small core of people in your corner, regardless of what you want to do. They want to be.
You had people when you were there telling you couldn't do it.
Always,
sorry,
it never,
go back to what we said earlier.
It never ended, but it can't be your parents. They need to be, those are the people that need to be, telling you, you need to work hard, and also, a little bit of a realist, like it might not happen. You might fail at it, but at least you're going to go down swinging. And I think that's the message that I like to share. My daughter is, she just turned 7, and I had her playing all these different things, and she loved it, and she likes to try some new things, but it takes a while to get her into it. She doesn't want to do it, and then she gets out there and loves it. Because she hates failing. She's in school, like her teacher was like, she won't even give me an answer because she's so afraid to have the wrong answer. And I'm like, as a parent, like, what was I doing wrong? Maybe it was me, maybe it wasn't, but I think I've really been proactive, whether it's my oldest guy, my youngest, whatever, letting them know it's okay to fail at things and not be good at things.
Totally.
And I think that's a belief that needs to be passed on from the parents.
Well, that's that transitionary period. Like, I think that's all kids, right? The transition from going from this to that. It's like even going to church, right? You got to get ready. You got to get up. Like then you're getting in the car, and then they're there and like, oh, they had a great time, or you're going to grandma's house or going to dinner. Like that transitionary period for any, adolescent is like the biggest, that's what we all fight about as parents. Like,
not just
I'm sitting there going, I can't have the only kids that are like this. And everybody's, oh no, my kids like that too. So it's like, but can I ask one question, Dale? Because I think I like this idea of transition, because I work with a lot of pros that when they retire, they get into coaching. And one of the things I do from my other background, my coaching education world, is working with ex-pro athletes to kind of transition into being coaches. And surprisingly, there's a lot of like, you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize the coaches did all this. So maybe you could talk about a little bit, like from when you played. And I always look at it as like, as a player, you had trainers, you had nutritionists, you had schedulers, you had a travel coordinator, you had, all that, your world was scheduled for you for the most part. Like where have you seen getting into the youth coaching world are like the biggest things that you were prepared for, and some of the things you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, I love the way you speak on scheduling, because since I was 17 years old, you live with your billet family playing junior. Everything is scheduled for you. Everything is, be here on this time, be here this time. You get into pro, be here this time. The bus is leaving this time. This, and then not playing anymore. It's like I don't really have a schedule, and I kind of lose myself a little bit. So I can see on ex players, I could see how that becomes a little bit of an issue. On the youth side, to me, what I think. Communicating with kids, I think I find is a problem, where I'm saying it as clear as I can say it, and they're still looking at me like I'm crazy, and I have 3 heads, and I can demo it, and they'll still go do it wrong, and I can demo it again, and there's still someone that does it wrong. So I think for me, the biggest challenge has been just I think my communication skills, trying to be clear with them, telling them what I would like them to do, telling them what I want them to do. It's been difficult.
I use the example a little bit. Sorry, Lee. I just want to tell the one story, just because I used to use the example. A couple of years ago, I coached with Colton Orr with the Connecticut Whale for a little bit, and these women professional athletes they literally were over the top with their skill level. And then I coached a Pee Wee boys team, a 12U boys team, and I would try to do the same drills with the group and the women's group. I would do the drill, and they're like, okay, well, I got to change the drill in 5 minutes, because they were just boom, boom, boom. They understood it. They were out thinking any of the skill or the drill we were trying to do with the game. And then I have these 12-year-old boys. I'm like, these kids are idiots. Like, they can't, like, is it me? Like I explain it the exact same way. And I think that's the same thing. Like, when you're a professional athlete and a coach is asking you to do something, you're at a level where you can inject all these great things, right? But then when you're working with 8-year-olds, it's there's gaps like in there. They don't, that doesn't exist for them.
Mike, let me dive in here. Dale, you'll like this story too. So, look, in hockey, there's a point you get enough muscle memory that you can just learn things very quickly. And I would say when I coach pro or I'm working with pro athletes, I expect them to get what I'm doing really 1 or 2 tries. They should have it down. And that's typically, sometimes it's less than 1, Mike, to your point. Like, they just get it.
Yeah.
And I remember the moment specifically with my son's 8U team when it clicked in my head. It's going to take them 20 times to figure this out before they're going to have any idea. And I remember thinking, man, that's a lot. But when I kind of understood that and accepted that, it changed how I approached practice quite a bit. In fact, I made the suggestion, which we took, of let's do less drills and explain them better than say, oh, we got to get these 6 drills done in this 45 minutes. Let's do 4 drills well instead of 6 drills, just kind of like it's a playground. And I said, and I'm going to take the extra 2 minutes on the ice, which is, I'm always against doing at the higher levels. I don't want to waste any of my ice time, but I'm going to take the 2 minutes on the ice to show them on the board and explain it to them correctly. So they'll do it. But I'm going to tell you, man, I was frustrated for a long time before I realized it's 20 times. It's going to take half the season for them to understand how to make a good pass. Oh my God. That was kind of eye-opening to me. It was painful, to say the least.
Well, I was in an old, like back in the day, Bill Parcells used to do a coaching clinic. And, I used to go to in New Jersey, and he'd have like this, 300 people. And and one of the things that resonated with me as a young coach when he gave this clinic, he was still coaching, is one of the things that resonated with me is the ability to say, well, if I'm running something that my athletes don't get after 3 times, then it's my problem. Like, I'm doing it wrong. Like, I'm explaining something, or I'm putting something they're not ready for. So you got to, he goes, and he used to laugh because, except if it was LT, he would do stuff that nobody knew what the hell he was doing, and he would do it great. Right. So I was like, I always try to use that when I'm thinking about my 10U and 8U kids. Like, okay, if I put something in there that's stumping them, then that's on me. And I think that's, at the end of the day, like we do that with our, we expect our teachers, right? Our teachers they're not there to fail our kids. They're there to teach them, right? They're like, you don't get a pleasure. There's no teacher that gets pleasure at the end of the year. You're like, well, I failed 40% of the class. I did my job, that's, so, and I think that's what we have to look at as coaches. We have to say, well, how did all of my kids move on to the next level and move up in their development? Right. And I didn't fail anybody. To me, failing is like they quit or they made the B team or whatever. But what can I do? And how did I position? So I think, to your point, Dale, like, sometimes when you're looking at the kids and you're like, okay, I don't have to dumb it down. I just have to make a drill that is age appropriate and then they can understand, even though, like, and Leeds said it earlier, right? Like, I understand it, but I'm 50 years old, right? So it's like, why don't you understand it? What's wrong with you? I go, what's wrong with you is me.
Yeah.
So it's a hard ego to, it's hard not to joystick those kids.
You gotta take that ego out. It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Very hard.
So Dale, one more thing, and then I actually want to dive back in your NHL career real quick. But we were talking earlier about failure, and like, you have to kind of eliminate the fear of failing, and that's hard. But one quote I've been telling my kids, and I say this when I speak now, is the most successful people in the world have failed more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that quote because it just shows you, like, you got to learn how to fail eloquently, and you got to learn how to fail and learn. And look, I always say this too: the whole game of hockey, the whole game, is built on capitalizing on other people's mistakes. Like, that's the whole game. So there's not another teacher out there better than hockey, I think, of how to fail the right way. I mean, again, there's never been a perfect game played. It's never happened, right? You're gonna fail. So I just love that quote. The most successful people have failed more than anybody else. And I always kind of keep that in mind anytime I'm having a rough day.
I failed a lot the last couple of days.
Well, not with that hair, bro. That hair, you can't fail with a head of hair like that.
No. I got a good barber, Sammy.
Yeah, Dale, I got two more questions for you. One is I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about your first game. New York Rangers, right? You come up, if I'm not mistaken, I think you had a pretty big tilt that night with Dan Carcillo of the Flyers, right? Who's a tough. It was at that time a very fan favorite tough guy in Philly. So this is how I want to walk through this, just based on what we talked about, because you talked about your coming up through the ranks, being a talented player, right? And here you are in your first game in what was an Atlantic Division rival game, and that's kind of how you're thrown into it. Can you describe that, kind of the feelings of playing in your first game? And I'm not trying to just focus on the fight, but just in general.
And being in the Garden. I mean, you're gonna fight in the Garden.
All I knew is it was my first game. I was gonna find somebody. Like regardless, I knew the day before when I got called up. I knew we were playing Philly. I got called. We practiced in Hartford. I was in Hartford at the time. We practiced. We were finished by noon. They told me after practice, "Hey, you're playing in Philly tomorrow at 12. Whatever, pack your bags or get a call, hop on a flight, whatever it was." And so it was quick turnarounds, which was great. I didn't have all day to think about it. By the time I caught the flight, I got into Philly late, 9-10 o'clock. I went into the room, fell asleep, and then boom, you wake up, you have breakfast, go to the rink. So it was kind of a whirlwind. And, I'm looking at the roster. I'm like, okay, obviously I've been following the league forever. I know, like, Dan Carcillo led the league in playing this, the year before. So I need to make a name for myself. I'm coming up. John Tortorella is the coach. I'm going to make a name for myself. So, I asked him in warm up, we're skating around. I'm like, hey, it's my first game. You got to give me one tonight. And he's like, beat it. I don't even know who you are. I was like, okay, well, he's not going to fight me. So maybe I got to find a way to force him to. And like, I'm running around all game and I'm trying to get him to fight me, He won't do it. He's like, first game. I don't need to fight you. I said, okay, whatever. And it was like 4 minutes left. And I absolutely beelined somebody, almost like flipped into the Flyers bench and everything. At that point, we were losing 4-1. He had no choice. He had to fight me. I knew he was on the ice. There's 5 minutes left. So he came over and fought. It's funny. Like, I had him on a podcast I did last year and we laugh about it and stuff. So it was really cool. And I got on Don Cherry on Saturday night, which as a Canadian kid was like the end all be all for me. So it was just such a cool memory.
Yeah. And it's funny. We talk about this before the show, how much the game's changed, right? Since that time. But like, I remember that. and then you ended up in Philadelphia for a while too. I said to you before, I appreciated your time here before you bounced around. Mike, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, I don't know if the game's changed that much. We'll see in game 1 of this year's Philadelphia Flyers. I don't know. Right. We'll see. Coach Tortorella behind the bench. You might need to go down and do a little pep talk, Dale.
Well,
yeah. I'm sure he's going to say a lot of the same things. And it has changed in that standpoint where I don't care how skilled you are. You're getting called up. You're starting on the fourth line. You got to do something to stand out.
Right.
So I mean, now a guy gets called up. He's getting put on the second line. He's a skilled guy. It's changed that way. But I think Torts is going to change how things work there, at least for a little bit to start.
Well, I'll tell you this: our producer Caitlin, who takes photos professionally, was at the Flyers practice the other day, and she got this great photo of him while they're being bag skated, just smiling ear to ear in the Torts way. And I just posted that. I wrote, "When you love your job," because he's a guy who understands the importance of identity from my take, and he's going to build some in the Flyers organization who do desperately need it. All right, last question from you, Dale. I got to ask this. Anytime I do an intro and I get to say something like the Dutch Gretzky, I gotta ask about it because you played overseas. I know it was during the lockout in the Netherlands. You played in their top level, and you had some prolific numbers there in about 20 games. But talk a little bit about international hockey, because I don't think, in my opinion, a lot of American fans understand how large this game is outside of the NHL. And then talk to me about that moniker that you earned.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's a completely different world over there. Like, these leagues have some great funding. The crazy thing is the Netherlands is not a well-known league. The team I was at probably had bigger funding than the Swedish league team that I played on last year. So right. some of these teams have huge sponsors. They got big budgets, and they just love their hockey. They're passionate. It's a different vibe. You know, you're in arenas that have 5,000 fans or 7,000. They're on top of you. It's loud. It's like, you know, it's like a minor hockey setup. You know, it really, and you know, I had the time of my life during the lockout. I didn't think I was going to be there long. I literally went. I thought I was going to play 2 weeks. Ended up staying there 3 months, and I had the time of my life. It's such a cool atmosphere. The way they chant all game and play drums, and like it's like soccer. Anybody that hasn't seen European hockey, watch, you know, European soccer, and it's like that, just on a smaller scale.
I'll tell you this, just backing you up here. So again, I coached in England for a while. Yeah, it is a total soccer atmosphere, but these fans are just as passionate as anywhere else. In some ways more, because you really get to know the players when you're in a kind of a small market team, if you want to say that. And again, these leagues are not run like the NHL where there's revenue sharing and, you know, CBAs. Like these teams kind of have to fend for themselves as clubs. And then here's another one for you. I most recently coached down in Miami. I was coaching the Puerto Rican national men's team, who won a gold medal at this event. And Mike, I haven't told you this one. We're playing in Mexico, and there is a full mariachi band in the stands, dressed like playing mariachi music, and then they went in the locker room after the game. I'm like, this is amazing. This is awesome. Right. So like you just never know what you're gonna see. But I wanted to bring it up quickly because I think that more parents, and I'm talking to kind of the kids now that are in that kind of 16 to 18 or junior area, don't write off looking overseas. First off, you're going to have an amazing experience no matter what. All right. Just culturally, number one, but the hockey is probably better than you think. And I know players who've played overseas that, you know, met their wives overseas and they had families. Some of them stayed. So I just want to say, you know, even if the NHL is your goal, nothing wrong with that, but don't write off the rest of the world because there's hockey played everywhere. And I'm so thankful for my time with these teams. And I'm sure you, as you said, you are too.
Yeah, that's something I think that's a really good point for anyone that's listening to the show right now that is in that age. I definitely wouldn't write it off. You can make a tremendous living over there. That was something that really surprised me. Let's, you know, just financial for a second here. You can make a really good living there, and you know you're not paying the tax that you would in the States, and there's some different ways around it, and you can make a really good living, and you can play a long time there.
Yeah.
You know. There's so many different leagues. Like you can play a good American League Hockey League player who, you know, maybe by the time he hits 30, he's probably done, can go to Europe and play there till 40. It's less taxing on your body. You don't play as many games and be a star and be a hero in some of these small towns. Like you said, they're so passionate about their teams, and you know, there's no sharing. So you do a lot of fundraising events. So the fans get to interact with the players a million times more than you do in the NHL. You get to know, you're more involved, and it's a really cool experience for anyone that gets the opportunity. I wouldn't turn it down or looking at as, you know, well, I didn't make the NHL, now I have to go to Europe. I think it's a really good option for a lot of people. And if people are on the fence, I definitely, you know, it's one of those things you got to try.
Yeah, man, hockey is hockey. And I'll tell you, that experience alone is probably worth it. But Dale, I gotta be honest with you, this was a fantastic conversation today. I loved every minute of this, and I really appreciate you giving us the time with 4 kids, much less your hockey side of things. Four kids, you gave us all this time today. I appreciate that.
Hey, this is awesome, guys. It's something I'm really passionate about, obviously now coaching and just being around hockey parents. I love talking hockey and just kind of sharing my experience because, you know, to anyone that's out listening, you know, I was a perfect example of a kid that you would have saw me at any age and you would have said, I'll never play in the NHL, and ended up having a great career. So never as a parent think your kid can't make it. And as a kid, never think that you can't, because it's never over, regardless. You're 25, 26, 27, 18, 16. It's never over for you. And, you know, it's never over till you say it's over.
Well, that's a great way to end this. I'll give you the final note on that and just close it out. But Dale Weise, fantastic episode. Again, if you've got questions for him, you want to send to us, email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com, or any other questions. You all don't hesitate. So feel free. That's how you get in contact with us. And remember, every episode we've ever done can be found on ourkidsplayhockey.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're everywhere. This audience has put us in the top 10. I'm still weirded out by saying that. And again, having great guests like you, Dale, helps affirm what we're trying to do here. So once again, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. This was awesome.
Yeah, it was. So for Mike Benelli, I'm Lee Elias. Again, thanks for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Check us out. Share it in your team snap. Let all your friends know. Give us that 5-star review wherever you're listening, and continue to listen. We'll see you next week on Our Kids Play Hockey. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.